Okay, guys. I'm sure you guys missed most of what I was saying. So, for a very basic network, all you need is two devices connected together. Now, in this scenario, there's two end clients together. So, in that case, you use a crossover cable, which is very different than a straight through cable. Newer devices do have the capability to auto sense whether you have a straight through or crossover in the mix, and it will adjust accordingly. But that's not always the case. So if you're using end clients, like a computer, it should be, and you're connected to another end client, it should be a crossover cable. If you're going from a network device to a end client, then it's a straight through. So in this scenario right here, we have a web server set up and a client. And I will show you the configuration that we have for them. Okay, so this is the configuration we have for the laptop. The network that we're setting up right now is 10.0.0.2. Default subnet mask, it doesn't really matter. And well, it matters, but doesn't really matter right now. Default gateway is nothing, because we don't need a default gateway. You only need a default gateway when you're leaving your network. And if you're not leaving your network ever, you don't need one. Here's our server. The server is 10.0.0.1. Basic subnet mask and no default gateway. We go into our laptop and to the command prompt. We can ping the server. Ping 10.0.0.1. There we go. To verify this, we can also, that's verified. We can also open up our web browser. So if we close this out right here, go into our web browser, punch in our host 10.0.0.1. Go. Hey, look, it's the fucking internet. Okay, we have connectivity to our internet server. Okay. Now we want to make this into a larger network. We have more clients that would like to share the server. So we're going to add another client. Okay. And for all this to work, we're going to need a switch. Now, we got here switches. We'll go with a 2960. Now, one of the things that separates a switch from a router is every port on a switch is enabled by default. It's when you take it out of the box, brand new, you can plug it in and start plugging devices in, and everything will start working. Unlike a router, where every port is disabled by default, you have to manually turn them on, or they won't work. So we're going to change this. We need to get rid of our crossover and add in a couple straight throughs. So I'm going to click on the delete icon here. Delete that. Notice these green markers tell you the connection's up. Okay. And then going to the lightning bolt in the bottom left corner and selecting the solid black line for straight through. The dotted is crossover. Click on the device that you want to connect to, and then the port that you want to connect to. So fast Ethernet 0 to the switch, fast Ethernet 01. Now the four switches, when you plug in devices into the switch, generally other network devices are going to be at the last couple ports on the switch, and client stuff that are going to be on the first couple ports of the switch. So our client here is going to end up as 1. And our second client is going to end up on port 2. And our server, we will do that the second last port, so 23. 24 we're going to reserve for our router. Okay, now we need to program in some IP addresses. I used 10.10.10 a while ago when I was playing around with this. I keep wanting to put it in. Ping our other clients, make sure everything's good. Got 1. Dot 2. Perfect. We have full connectivity in our LAN. There we go. We're all green across the board. Now, switches, they operate by default at layer 2. And they work off of MAC tables. And the way it works is when a packet comes in from somewhere, let's say let's say this laptop wants to talk to the server. So he sends a packet out and it gets to the switch. If the switch doesn't know who that person is or where they are, it will push out that packet to every port except for the one that it came in on. So it would go this way and it would go that way. And the laptop will receive it and disregard it because it's not meant for him. And then the server, though, it will receive it and then send back. And when it sends back, as traffic comes into the switch, it memorizes the MAC address of the device that's on there. So that's how it learns who's on what port. So in the future, when this laptop tries to communicate with the server and the packet comes in and it looks at it and goes, oh, I know who this MAC address belongs to. It belongs to the device on port 23. So it will send that packet to out port 23 and not out every port. Okay, so slowly it will learn every device that's on. My phone's like blowing up here. So I'm sure it's not important. And then that's how it learns and it develops a table. Okay, and that's when it's operating at layer 2. Now, when you go through the labs and stuff like that, you'll be programming an IP address into the switch, and that's strictly for remote management. Okay, most switches are capable of operating at layer 3, and it usually just does that for management, so that you could log in through the network to your switch and make configuration changes and stuff like that, enable, disable things and whatnot. Okay, so now we have a switch up and we have clients, and that's all good. Let's add a router into this. So we're going to be using the 2811 router. Okay, we're going to add that to our network. And we just need a connection to it. Now this is going to be port 24. And we're going to use Fast Ethernet 01. 01 is going to be the inside of our network, and 00 is going to be the outside of our network. Now the connection's not up right now. Nothing's been configured onto the router. Okay, there, and there. That's good. Now, let's go into the... I want to make sure I'm going through the same stuff that you guys are going through. Name, initial routing configuration, PowerPoint. Ah, shit. That's right, I don't have it installed on here. Okay, I know most of this off the top of my head, and we'll just go off of that. That's all fucked up right now. I need to install Office. Okay, so basic router stuff. Alright, so anytime you're trying to connect to a router, there's generally 4 different ways to get into it. The first one is the standard, and that's the console into the router. And there's a physical port on the router called the console port. You need a blue cable to get into it, or just a DB9 adapter with a crossover cable, I believe, which I think some of you guys may end up getting if you get one of the routers from the unit. And the console port, you connect that to your COM port and you use PuTTY. Back in the day, we used to use Hyperterminal. And then you just open up PuTTY, log in through your console port. Through your COM port. The other way is through your auxiliary port, which is really for remote management, which you would connect it to like a modem. The auxiliary port virtually never gets used. Another way is to telnet into it. Once you have everything configured on the router and it's actually on the network and everything's good to go, you can telnet into it. You do have to set telnet up though for it to work, and we'll walk through that. That's in all the documentation on how to set up telnet. What else? Let's see. Oh my god, I'm gonna see if I can pause this video and deal with my phone. Okay, now that I turned my phone off, let's continue. Alright, we'll just stick with that for now. Telnet, console, and auxiliary. And there's one more I can't think off the top of my head, but it's in the documentation. I'm sure you'll find it. Alright, one thing you'll notice when looking at the router itself, it has a compact port on there. Compact flash port, I should say. The operating system and configuration files usually the operating system is on there, and a lot of times people will back up their config files to it as well. As well as if you look at the other side, you'll have your FA00, your FA00 right here, FA01 there. Then you'll have these ports right here. They're called HWIC ports, and you can put in almost anything you can think of. You can put in like a telephone line. You can put in serial ports, more Ethernet ports. These devices are extremely versatile. Routers, when Cisco makes a router, Cisco makes it so that it can do a million things, and you have to pay for everything you want it to do. I.e., they will develop it, make a very comprehensive OS for it, operating system, and the operating system that you'll get will have like the bare bones that does very limited stuff. And every capability that you want the router to do, you have to pay for it. So that's how they make their money. Hey, let's get into the command line. Now, when a router starts up and there's nothing on it, okay, it's going to ask you, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? I'm going to tell you, say no. It's the setup wizard they got sucks, and it's a pain in the ass, and it's just better to do it yourself. I'll tell you that right now. All right, so nope. All right. So this is what you're going to see when you log into the router. If you look at the arrows right there, that arrow right there, that means you're in user mode. Okay, that arrow, like, I'll explain as we go through it, but that tells you you're in user mode. User mode, all you can do is just view a couple things. You can't edit, change, and there's a lot of things that you can't see. Okay, it's very, very restrictive. You can do almost nothing. Right now, we're logged in on the command port, console port, and we're going to be setting a password, everything on it. All right, so to go into the next mode, which is privileged exec mode, which gives you administrative rights, you do the command enable. Now, when you do commands, I did the question mark. Okay, when you do commands, if you put in enough characters so that the command is the only command that it could be, you can just hit enter and it's fine. So for enable, I always do en, and if you look at the list, there's only one thing that has an en in it. So if I do en, it will just accept the command like that. You don't have to put the whole command in. The only times that it gets picky about that is if you have a command with a dash in it. So like running config. Running config, it's one word, but there's a asterisk in the middle of it. So it wants that first part with the asterisk and then like the first letter after that. I think it's a little picky about that. So en. So I'm in privileged exec mode, and you can tell that by the hashtag now. That's there. Now I can do all sorts of administrative stuff. But to actually make real configuration changes to the router, I need to go into global configuration mode. To do that, you have to punch in the command configure terminal. I just do config T. Config T. Now I'm in global configuration mode, and again, if you look right here, like where it says router, that's the name of the device, and then after that, it shows you where you're at. So now we're in the configuration mode with the admin privileges. Now I want to change my host name, the name of the router. The command is host name, and then when you put the host name in, you can't have any spaces or any spaces in. You got special characters, but you can't have spaces. That's a big one. Runs underscore router 1. Hit enter. And if you look right here, it's changed the name now. Okay. Now we're going to configure the first access point into the device, which is the console. Okay. Now you do this for security reasons, obviously, so people just can't get in and mess with your shit. Though I'm going to say this 100 times: if you have access to it, like physical access, you have full access. Breaking into a Cisco device is incredibly easy to do. So what we're going to do is line console. You can do console 0. Okay, so for your telnet connections and your console connections, the command is line. So line console 0. So now I'm in the configuration for the console port itself. I'm going to add a password. Password 1, the most secure password ever. Okay, you force them to log in. If you put a password on and you don't make them log in, period, it won't ask for the password. It'll just let them in. And then exit. Exit will back you up one step. End will back you up all the way out to privileged exec mode. Okay. So I'll just keep exiting out. Exit. Okay, so if you look now, I'm all the way out. Now if I go back in now, it's going to ask me for a password. Okay, it's the password that we just did because we're logging in through the console port. One of the biggest issues I always see people, like, once you start programming multiple passwords into it, people get so fucking confused on how they're getting in and what passwords are for what. It really throws them for a loop for whatever reason. So, password 1. And I'm in. Enable. Big T. Now we'll do the Telnet ones. Line. Now Telnet, it's VTY, virtual teletype something. Line, and then we're just going to do 0 to 4. 0 space 4. Now, you can only have like a certain amount of people log into your router through Telnet based on how many virtual connections you've configured. If you configure 5, which is example here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, then there you go. 5 people can log in. You can configure, depending on the device, I've never had to configure more than 15, but I'm pretty sure you can do a lot more than that. Password, we're going to say password 2. Again, you have to do login. Okay. There's another command. It's called logging synchronous, and it's a very useful command. A lot of the times when you're in the router will just start spitting out information left, right, and center, and you will look like you're not on a line anymore, and it throws you for a loop. And to fix that, use the command logging synchronous. And what that does is, as the router spits out information out in the command line, it will constantly move your current line down, and so it doesn't look like it's messing with you. Though when it does spit all that out and you're not using logging synchronous, nothing's actually changed. All that stuff isn't on your line. Okay? So logging synchronous. Yeah. If you're ever not sure, like, you start spelling it, you put a question mark at the end. It will show you every, like, as far as you got, every command that's available. So logging synchronous, I'm going to have to do this on the console one. Because right now, I'm not even logged in on the console one, on the Telnet one. I'm logged in on the console one. So if it's not configured on the console port, it's not helping me. So exit, line, con 0, logging synchronous. Okay. There we go. We got that set up. Exit. Now we're going to want to set a password up for the admin side. So people who do get in as a user can't just jump into privileged exec mode and start making big changes. So that's pretty simple. So it's enable to get into it, right? So enable password is the command. If you're ever not sure, if you put a space after it, it'll show you every command that's after that. Now there's two kind of passwords you can set. You can set the enable password or the enable secret password, or you can configure both of them. Now if you just configure the enable password and you give it a password, when you view the configuration file, you can see what the password is. On the other hand, if you configure the secret password, it encrypts the password in the running configuration. Now, you can also program both of them, and if you have both of them configured, the router will always authenticate with the secret one first. Okay, so if you have both of them configured, it doesn't even matter that you configured the password one, because the router is just going to ignore it. So just for the sake of it, we're just going to do the enable password one, the unencrypted one. Password And we'll do hello. Okay, now if we back out of here, okay, so we have our console one, which was password 1. Now we go to enable, we have a password, and it's hello. Okay, and then there we go. So now we have to do our ports, because remember, the router ports are disabled by default. So we got to do the Fast Ethernet 00 and Fast Ethernet 01. Okay, which is the two on there. Again, 01 is your internal net, 00 is your external net. So, config T, interface FA, which is Fast Ethernet 0/0, and I have to give it an IP address, and then so you give it an IP address. What's our external network going to be? Let's do the 192. Sure, yeah, 192.168.0.1. Yeah, that's what we'll do. And then we have to give it a subnet mask. So 255.255.255.0. Okay, so now that we have an IP address and a subnet mask, enter. And then again, the port is disabled by default. To enable the port, you have to do a no shutdown. Why no shutdown? The command no does the opposite of whatever command you want reversed. So to shut down a port, you put shut down. To undo it, you put no shutdown. If I wanted to change, like get rid of the IP address that I just put in, the IP address 192.168.0.1.255.255. If I want to get rid of that, I just put that same command, but no in front of it, and it'll get rid of it. So any command that you accidentally put in, you just redo it again, but put no in front of it, and it will remove it. It'll undo it. So that's why you do the no shutdown. You could just put no shut as well. It'll take that. So you'll see a little message come up saying that the Ethernet port has changed state to up. So whenever you look in the router, the port is going to have a couple different phases, and one's the line protocol, and then one's the port itself. So if you have up, it means the protocol is configured and the port is up and active. If you have up down, which means it's configured, there's nothing plugged into it right now. Then you have down down, it's disabled and it's not configured. I'll show you that in a bit. So we have our port configured and it's up. And we do the same thing for the our internal port. Exit, interface, FA, Fast Ethernet. If you weren't sure, you can always do the question mark. So Fast Ethernet's right there. And if you look, FA is the only command in there. So just doing FA, it knows that that's the one you mean. So FA 0/1. IP address. So this is our internal network. So our internal network again is 10.0.0.0//8 or 255.0.0.0.0. So let's add this in. So the server was .1, the router will be .1. For IP naming conventions, The first couple IP addresses generally go to the network devices. So the .1 will be your gateway out, your router. Your .2 would be any like switches. If you have more than one switch, your .3, .4 will be all the switches. And then if you have any network peripherals like printers and scanners and stuff like that, they generally take the last couple IP addresses. If you do a DHCP pool, they'll generally be like towards the end, a large chunk towards the end, or all the remaining ones, depending how big you want to put the DHCP pool. So IP address 10.0.0.1 and 255.0.0.0. No shuts. Exit. Now, one of the commands that you can do to verify the interface, you can do show interface. Show interface FA 0/0. This will show you like all the in-depth stuff, everything about that port, the line protocol, everything you ever could possibly want on the port. It'll show you that, which most of the information is not actually important to you for the most part. Obviously, there's a couple things in there, the IP address, stuff like that. But the better one, which I like to use for troubleshooting, is show IP interface brief. Okay, and it gives you a quick summary of all your ports that you have. Okay, you have fast Ethernet 00. Okay, if you look, this is our external side. So it's programmed, but there's nothing plugged into it. This one right here, this is our internal side. It's programmed, and there's something plugged into it, and it's good to go. And it's passing traffic, and it's all happy. We haven't done anything with the VLAN 1, which is fine for now. Okay, so we just have to make a small change now in our actual land. Okay, what do we got here? So the server. So now we need a gateway now that we have our router set up, or we're going to be creating more networks. So our router is going to be 10.0.0.1. This guy could be .2. I hope it doesn't cause a conflict right now. The network's probably freaking out. 2.1, 2. Let's go 3 for this guy. Oh, 10.0.0.3. Oh, I think it's just unhappy. The address already in use of the network. Yeah. Let's change you to .4. 10.0.0.1. We're going to make .2 the switch. Again, that's just for network management. And 0.0.1. Okay, and everything should be coming back up. Let's do a quick ping test. That's not what I want. Command prompt. Okay. Two is the switch, which hasn't been configured yet. 3 is the other station. Yeah, good. Okay. Alright, so that was really basic stuff for the router to get that going on this side. We're going to set up the switch as well. Command line. Okay, so a lot of the commands in the router are the same as the switch. So enabled, again, we're logging in through the console port. Config T. Interface. Icon 0. Oh, nope. Not interface. Line. Icon 0. Password. Password 1. Keep the same standard so I don't forget. Login. Logging. Synchronous. And exit. And IBTY04. Password. Password 2. A lot of times you can overwrite a command if there's no other. If there's only one variable to the command, you can overwrite it. If there's several, you can't. You'll just keep adding new entries. Once a bit more. Exit. And password. This one we'll use enable secret so you can see the difference. Password. Enable secrets. Oh, I think I screwed this up somewhere. Yep. Enable secrets. Now so you go. What the fuck was the last password? It was hello. Hello. Okay. Now, to remotely manage the switch, you need to give it an IP address, and it doesn't have like a ports like routers and the laptop, stuff like that. You have to configure the VLAN IP address in order to remotely access it. So, interface VLAN 1 IP address 192.168. Nope. 10.0.0.2 55.20.0.0. Don't VLAN 1 should be up and going. I don't think I have to do a no shutdown. You shouldn't have to. Exits. Okay, I should be able to ping the switch from the laptop now. Where before I couldn't. I already shouldn't have been able to. Oops. Okay. There we go. So I can ping the switch now. Now if I want to, I can telnet into the switch. To telnet into a device, you just use the command telnet and then the IP address. Two. Did I do login? Just open. BTY password login. Why is it refusing? Connection refused by remote host. I'll have to double check. I did set it up with a password and login. I'll have to play with that. Okay. To set a default gateway in a switch, you have to use a command T. Let's see if I can remember this. IP default gateway. The question mark will help you get through most configuration issues. Gateway. And then the address. So this is going to be the router. Your obviously your gateway out. 10.0.0.1. Okay, that's pretty much set up. You can go in and by default all the ports on all the switch ports are configured to auto duplex, auto speed. If you have devices that are manually set to their duplex, like it's manually set to full duplex and manually set to 100 megabits, you're going to want to change the port itself, the speed and duplex on the port. It's in the lab and then in the notes on how to do that. Most of the time, the devices are all going to be set to auto negotiate. If both devices are set to auto negotiate, it's perfect. But if you have one that's not, it causes issues. So just something to keep in mind. Yeah. Okay, I figured out what my issue was. For VLAN 1, I did have to change it. Actually, I put in no shutdown. It was shut down by default. So I fixed that. Now I can actually tell that into it, into the switch. So there's your switch IP address. Password is password 2, or yeah, password 2. Password 2. Enabled. Hello. And now we're into make any changes we want. One thing I didn't change in here, but I changed in the router, is something called IP domain lookup. IP domain lookup is whenever you punch, like trying to connect to like a remote server or whatever, and you're using a name, like a host name, and not a IP address, it will try to resolve that name and do. So that's what the function is. IP domain lookup. Essentially, like it tries to run like search for the DNS to resolve the name that you used into an IP address. It is a pain in the ass if you accidentally type in the wrong command, because then it tries to resolve that incorrect command into an IP address. It takes a while. I'll give you an example. I'm not sure this should trigger. Okay, and it's going to do this for a while it tries to translate that. My recommendation is when you take over a router, input the command no IP domain lookup. It's going to save you a bunch of time. This goes on and on for a little while. It's probably like 1 or 2 minutes, but it feels like forever. So I'm just going to let that try to resolve it and go into the switch itself, which we have right here. This is done in the global configuration mode. So in here you put no IP. Let me just do the question mark. Domain dash. If you don't go up to just past the dash, it won't take it. It'll say it's ambiguous. So that's the only command that can be. And so there we go. And as you just saw, it just finished trying to resolve the DNS name. Feels like forever, I guess, whenever you're trying to like zip through it all. So now that that's in there, it shouldn't do that anymore. So I'll do the same thing I just did, fdSSS, and I'll just say it's a bad command. It doesn't try to resolve it. Saves you some time. Like the aggravation of like not only putting in the wrong command and then having to sit there and watch the screen. Ugh, it's a pain in the butt. Okay, what else is there? Just thinking about these, just the basic configurations that you can do. For your switch, you don't need much more than this. If you're doing VLANs, there's a lot more configuration into this, and we'll try to get into VLANs later this week or next week. There is a significant amount of change you have to do for it. Next command I want to introduce you to is the show run. So you have two kind of configuration files on the router and your switch. You have your running configuration, you have your startup configuration. Whenever you make changes, like live changes, they go into your running configuration. They don't go in your startup configuration. If you have a power outage or for whatever reason your router reboots and you haven't backed up your running configuration into your startup configuration, everything you just done is lost. That's a very important thing to remember. Anytime you're done configuring a device, you use the command write mem, and it will back up your running configuration into your startup configuration. To view either file, you use the command show. So show run. Now this command is done in the privileged exec mode. If you try to do it anywhere else, it'll say bad command. If you're in another menu, like let's say you're in global configuration and you're in an interface, programming interface, and you want to see what your running configuration is, you can do the do command in front of show run. If you do and whatever the command is, it doesn't matter where you are, as obviously not in user mode, but anywhere else, doesn't matter where you are, it will do the command. It doesn't care where you're at. So show run. Here's my current running configuration. If you look right here, this is the switch. So this right here is the password that we programmed. It's not actually the password. The password is password. That's the enable password. That's hello. So they encrypted the word hello to this. So if somebody looks at your configuration file, they won't be able to figure out what your admin password is. And then if we look at the router itself, which we went a different direction with, show run. If you look right here, there it is. The enable password, completely unencrypted right there for the world to see. So looking at our config file, there's the no IP domain lookup. Here's our fast Ethernet ports, our IP address, duplex set to auto, speed set to auto, fast Ethernet 00, IP address, yada yada, duplex auto. The command to change duplex and speed are just this. While you're in the interface, you just say duplex full or duplex half, and then speed 100, speed 1000, whatever. So here's our configuration for our line con 0, which are console port. They generally all have just one console port. And the way Cisco does all the numbering, the first port of anything is always 0. It always starts off with 0, period. So if there's only one port, it's port 0. Here's our telnet ones. So we configured 5 telnets connections. There's our password, login sequence, and login. Again, login is a very important part of it. If you don't do that, it'll just ignore asking the person. It won't try to authenticate them. It's very important that you put that in there. Okay. I think that's good for this first video. We have a very basic configuration on the router. We have a very basic configuration on the switch. We have full connectivity now. If I log into, I'm not sure there it is. If I log into the laptop, I should still be able to go to my web services. I think I changed that to 250. 10.0.0.250. There we go. Boom. I'm on the internet rolling around there on my web page. So we have full connectivity and we're good to go for our internal LAN. Okay. So I'll leave you off with this video here and I'll start a new video adding in new networks and then routing protocols and other stuff like that. Again, if you open up all the documentation, a lot of what I'm covering is in there. The labs follow this as well. Just roll with it. Have some fun.